You think the rent is the problem? It isn't. It never was. The rent is the place where the problem becomes visible to you, the way a fever is the place where an infection becomes visible to the body. The fever isn't the illness, the fever is the sign. And rushing to lower the fever without understanding what's underneath only buys you a few hours before it climbs again. Every month it climbs again. You've noticed that, haven't you? Even in the months you cover it, even in the months you scrape together exactly what's needed by the skin of your teeth, the relief never lasts. By the second week, the next month is already pressing in. The countdown resumes. The math starts running again in the back of your mind while you're trying to enjoy your coffee. And you wonder why peace doesn't stick when you keep paying for it on time. Peace doesn't stick because peace was never the thing you were buying. You were buying postponement. You were buying another 30 days of the same anxiety, and the anxiety came pre-installed in the next month before the rent was even paid. Stop for a second. I want you to notice something specific. The stress about rent is not a response to your finances. The stress about rent is the thing producing your finances. Read that twice if you need to. The stress is the cause, not the reaction. This is the part nobody tells you because the culture you grew up in trained you to believe that worry is responsible. That stress is just the natural overflow of a difficult situation. That if your situation got better, the stress would go away on its own. It's the opposite. The stress has to go first. The situation follows. The reason rent feels so heavy in you is not that the dollar amount is large. There are people paying twice what you pay with the same income and feeling lighter about it than you do. There are people paying half what you pay and feeling heavier. The dollar amount is almost incidental. What matters is the state you've attached to it. You've made rent the place in your life where you confirm every month that money is scarce, that you barely have enough, that you are one accident away from disaster. Rent has become the monthly ritual where you renew this contract with yourself. You don't even realize you're signing it, but every time you stress, calculate, brace, refresh your account, run the numbers in bed, you sign again. And the world, which mirrors what you sign, hands you back another month of barely enough. The stress is the contract, the lack is the delivery. Tear up the contract. I don't mean stop paying rent. I mean stop using rent as the place where you confirm scarcity. That's a separate thing. You can pay rent and not turn it into a monthly initiation rite into your own poverty. Here is what you're going to do instead. The next time the rent date approaches, and you feel the old tightening begin in your chest, you're going to stop and notice it. Not fight it, not lecture yourself out of it, just notice. Ah, there it is. The stress is starting. The contract is trying to be signed. Then you're going to do something simple, almost too simple. You're going to let the rent already be paid. Not as a hope, not as a wish, as a quiet, settled fact. The way you let it be true that the sun rose this morning. You don't argue with the sunrise. You don't refresh the news to confirm it happened. You just know, live in that knowing. The rent has been paid. It was paid days ago. It was paid before you even thought about it this month. It's already done, and you've already moved on to other things, and the rent is, frankly, boring to you. It's a small recurring transaction in a life with bigger concerns and bigger pleasures. Sit in that for a minute. 2 minutes if you can. Notice what your body does. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw, which you didn't know was clenched, releases. There's a small exhale you didn't know you'd been holding. That exhale is not a feeling about money. That exhale is the actual mechanism of what comes next. Money does not move toward people who are gripping. Money moves toward people who have exhaled. This isn't poetry, it's mechanics. Your nervous system communicates with the world more directly than your words do. A nervous system in panic broadcasts panic, and the world arranges panic-shaped events to confirm it. A nervous system at rest broadcasts rest, and the world arranges rest-shaped circumstances to match. You've been broadcasting panic into the question of rent for years. Of course, rent has been hard. The rent didn't decide to be hard. Your state decided for it. Now decide differently. I want to address the voice in your head that's already arguing. The voice that's saying you don't understand. This isn't an attitude problem, this is a numbers problem. The numbers don't lie. I make X, My rent is why the gap is real. That voice is sincere. It is also wrong about which way causation runs. The numbers are the result of the state, not the cause of it. Yes, the gap looks real. The gap is the gap that the state has been producing. Change the state and watch how the gap changes. Not all at once, not magically, but it changes. The shifts come through unexpected raises, unexpected work, unexpected windfalls, unexpected reductions in expenses you thought were fixed. The gap loosens because the state that was holding it tight has loosened. People who have actually done this report the same thing. They say, I don't even know how the money started flowing more easily. I just stopped white-knuckling rent, and within a few months things were different. They mean it. They genuinely don't know how. Because the how is not at the level they were watching. The how is at the level of state, and state is invisible to most people most of the time. You can become someone who notices state. That's the entire skill. There's also the matter of timing. Most people, even when they hear this, only practice the new state in the days right before rent is due. They wake up on the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and try to manufacture calm. By then it's too late for that month. The state that produces this month's rent was set weeks or months ago. You're not practicing for next week's rent. You're practicing for the rent of 3 months from now, of 6 months from now. The state you hold today is shaping the rent of a future month you haven't seen yet. So don't measure the practice by what happens on the next due date. Measure it by what your overall relationship to rent looks like a season from now. Most people give up too early. They try the new state for a week, see no immediate windfall, and conclude it doesn't work. They drop the new state and return to the old one, just in time for the rent they were already shaping with their old state to arrive in its old form. They take this as proof. It was proof of nothing except that they switched back too soon. Don't switch back. Hold the new state through the months when nothing visible is changing. The visible always lags the invisible. You're working at the level that produces the visible, which means by definition you're working before it shows. Here's something worth knowing. Rent is the place where most people first encounter the law that runs everything else. If you can solve rent at the level of state, you can solve nearly anything at the level of state. Rent is, in a sense, your training ground. Not because rent is the most important thing in your life, but because it's recurring, predictable, and emotionally loaded. It gives you 12 chances a year to practice. 12 chances to notice the old contract trying to be signed and to refuse to sign it. After a few cycles, something quiet shifts. You stop dreading the date. You stop running the math in bed. You stop refreshing your account. The rent becomes a small recurring outflow that handles itself, the way your phone bill handles itself, the way you don't lie awake worrying about your electric bill, the way most fixed expenses just exist in the background of your life without consuming your nervous system. That's the goal. Not to become rich, to make rent boring. When rent becomes boring, your relationship to all money shifts. The fear loosens, the grip releases. New money becomes able to come in, because new money has always required a person who isn't choking the channel. Now, one more thing, because this is where the real teaching lives. The stress about rent isn't really about rent. It's a stand-in for an older fear. The fear of being put out. The fear of having nowhere to go. The fear of the call from your mother saying she has nothing to lend. The fear of the friend's couch you'd have to ask for. The fear of being the one in the family who couldn't make it work. That older fear was already in you before you ever had a lease. Rent just gave the fear something specific to point at. If you don't address the older fear, you can pay your rent on time forever and still not feel safe. Plenty of people do exactly that. Their rent is handled and the fear is still there, looking for the next place to land. The car payment, the credit card, the grocery bill, the fear is patient. It will find a new vehicle. So when you sit and let the rent already be paid, what you're really doing is older than rent. You're letting yourself be safe in the world. You're letting yourself be held by something larger than your worry. You're allowing for a few minutes at a time the possibility that you are not actually one mistake away from catastrophe, that you are in fact fine, that you have always somehow been fine, that every previous month of fear was followed by another month of being housed, fed, and alive. Look at that pattern. It's the most ignored evidence in your life. You've been afraid of losing housing for years. You haven't lost housing. The fear has been wrong every single month, and yet you keep believing the fear instead of the unbroken record of the fear being wrong. Believe the record now. The record is that you have always been provided for. The record is that the worry never paid the rent. The record is that something in you, or something around you, or something through you has handled this every month, regardless of how the math looked in advance. That something is going to keep handling it. It doesn't need your stress to do its job. Your stress was never an input. Your stress was a tax you were paying on top of the rent, for nothing. Stop paying the tax. Pay the rent if it's due, sign the check or click the button or hand over the cash. Do that part normally when the time comes, but stop paying the additional tax of 2 weeks of stress every month for a transaction that takes 30 seconds to complete. The rent is just a transaction. You made it a religion. Make it a transaction again. And in the space that opens up when you stop the worship of this monthly fear, watch what fills in. Energy you didn't know you had. Mental room for ideas you couldn't think before. A different quality of conversation when money comes up at work, in negotiations, with potential clients. People feel the difference. They respond to the difference. Opportunities that wouldn't have come to the old you start finding the new you. This is how the block lifts. Not through striving, through the absence of the strain that was holding it in place. I want to stay with this idea of the block because most people who hear about money blocks imagine them as something complex. A childhood memory, a buried trauma, a specific limiting belief inherited from a parent. They think they need a therapist to dig it out, or a healer to dissolve it, or some long process of excavation, and maybe sometimes those things help. But the truth is simpler and closer than that. The block is the stress itself. That's it. Not what's underneath the stress, not what caused the stress, not the story you could tell about why you're like this. The stress in the present moment is the block. And the only way to remove a present moment block is to stop doing it now. You don't need to understand why you've been gripping. You need to notice you're gripping and let go. The understanding can come later or never. Letting go is independent of understanding. Most people delay the letting go indefinitely because they think they need to figure it out first. They don't. They just need to release. The figuring out is a stalling tactic the gripping uses to keep itself alive. Let go without understanding. Let go right now, before this paragraph ends. Just relax the grip. The understanding, if it ever comes, will arrive afterward, in the loosened space you've made. There's something else I want to address because I know your mind. Your mind is going to take everything I've said and try to turn it into a technique. It's going to start asking, how often should I sit and let the rent already be paid? How long should I sit? What should I visualize? What if I'm not feeling the having strongly enough? There is no technique. The moment you turn this into a technique, you've put it back into the doing mode, which is the exact mode you're trying to step out of. The instruction is not a method. The instruction is a pointing finger. It's pointing at a state that already exists in you, the state of someone for whom rent is settled and asking you to inhabit it. Inhabiting is not a technique. Inhabiting is just a different way of being in the same body, in the same room, in the same life. You don't need a routine to inhabit. You only need the willingness to stop performing the old way of being for a few minutes. If you find yourself trying to do this right, that's the signal that you've slipped back into striving. Soften. Forget the doing it right. Just notice that in this moment, you're a person whose rent is handled. There. You're already there. That's not a goal. That's a fact you keep covering with worry. Uncover it. There's one more layer here that's worth saying out loud because it tends to surprise people. The stress about rent is, in a strange way, a kind of identity. It's part of how you've been recognizing yourself. The person who worries about rent, the person who scrapes by, the person who is always one bad week from a problem. That identity, even though it's painful, is familiar. And familiarity has its own gravity. When you start to drop the stress, you may notice a quiet uneasiness, a sense of, who am I if I'm not the one worrying about this? The uneasiness is normal. It's the old identity protesting its own dissolution. Don't take it as a sign that you're doing something wrong. Take it as a sign that you're actually doing the work, because the old self only protests when the new self is genuinely arriving. Let the old identity dissolve. You don't have to push it out, you only have to stop feeding it. It feeds on stress, on calculation, on the constant rehearsal of lack. Stop offering those, and it starves on its own. What's left after it goes is someone you haven't quite met yet, someone for whom rent is small, money is fluid, and the future is not a thing to brace against. That person has been waiting under all of this. The stress wasn't protecting you from anything. It was the only thing standing between you and them. The rent will be paid this month. The rent will be paid next month. The rent will be paid the month after that, and the month after that, and one day you'll realize you stopped tracking because tracking became unnecessary. That day is closer than you think. Sit down now. Exhale. The contract you've been signing every month is in your hand. You don't have to sign it again. Set it down. Let it be already done.